Mariah sank into the plush armchair by the window, its velvet arms a poor consolation against the turmoil roiling inside her. She clasped her trembling hands over the swell of her abdomen, the early morning light filtering through gauzy curtains and casting soft patterns over her quivering form. Every breath felt like a betrayal, each inhale a reminder of the life growing within her and each exhale a surrender to the shame that threatened to swallow her whole. Beside her, Sharon and Tessa exchanged worried glances, two pillars of strength, both desperate to shield Mariah from further pain, yet powerless against the storm of secrets she carried. Mariah's shoulders heaved as she unleashed a cry that echoed through the otherwise silent room, a sound raw with anguish and fear. She called out for help, her voice cracking, "Please, someone, help me," and the words tore from her like jagged shards of glass. The two women moved in unison, Sharon's motherly arms encircling Mariah while Tessa's gentle hand rested upon her back, offering what little comfort they could. "It's okay, Mariah," Sharon murmured, "we're here. You're safe now. Just tell us everything." Tears streamed relentlessly down Mariah's face as she struggled to gather the fragments of courage that remained. The secret she bore was a relentless weight, pressing uncomfortably against her ribs and refusing to abate. Her voice was barely more than a whisper when she managed to choke out, I'm pregnant." The words trembled in the air, hanging between them like thunderclouds on the verge of bursting. Sharon's heart seized in her chest, and Tessa pressed closer, their vigilance unwavering. "You're carrying a life, sweetheart," Tessa said, her voice thick with compassion. "It's nothing to be ashamed of. We will stand by you." But Mariah's next confession struck them both like a physical blow. It wasn't consensual. "I was drugged," and she could not finish. The memory of that night was too horrifying, too visceral. The haze of the drug, the betrayal by someone she never dreamed could harm her, the coldness of the act that unfolded, all of it replayed in her mind with cruel clarity. Sharon's face contorted with fury and protectiveness as she watched her daughter's confession unravel. "Mariah, you didn't deserve any of this," she growled, her voice trembling between rage and sorrow. Tessa squeezed Mariah's hand, urging her to continue, to unburden her heart of every painful detail. And so Mariah spoke again, her voice steadier now but no less anguished. "Ian Ward, he gave me a drugged drink at the fundraiser. I thought it was just one too many cocktails after a long day. But then, everything went black. When I woke up, I was alone in his apartment and I couldn't remember how I got there. He told me it was okay, that no one would believe me. He laughed when I cried." Rage flared in Sharon's eyes. How dare Ian Ward do this to her? How dare he target her daughter, drugging her until she was vulnerable, using that vulnerability for his own twisted gratification? Mariah pressed on, voice quavering as she detailed the nightmares that had haunted her nights since, dreams of Ian's cold eyes, his hands that had no business wandering across her body, the helplessness that had held her in its grip. She spoke of the guilt that ate at her, of her fear that others would judge her or, worse yet, disbelieve her. She recalled each moment of waking horror as she discovered bruises she could not explain, pain that resisted her doctor's gentle probes, and the sick realization that she was pregnant. A child born of violence. A child she felt was tainted by shame. Tears pooled in her eyes as she whispered, "I'm so ashamed. I didn't fight back. I was too weak. I let him." Her voice broke, and she buried her face in Sharon's shoulder, weeping without restraint. Sharon's maternal instinct roared to life. She gently tilted Mariah's chin until their eyes met, fierce love and unbridled anger blazing in her mother's gaze. "Listen to me, Mariah," she said quietly. "This is not your fault. None of it. You did what you could. You survived." Tessa nodded, tears glistening in her own eyes. "You are so brave for telling us. We will not let Ian Ward get away with this. We will do everything in our power to make him pay for what he did." At the mention of Ian's name, Mariah flinched, the memory of his smug face too fresh. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. I want justice, she said, voice small but resolute. I can't let this go unpunished. In that moment, a plan began to form. Sharon would use every resource at her disposal, her connections, her legal team, her unshakable resolve, to bring Ian Ward to trial. Tessa, with her unwavering friendship, would stand by Mariah through every therapy session, every doctor's appointment, and every courtroom ordeal. And Mariah, despite the shame that threatened to crush her, would reclaim her power by telling her story, by exposing the monstrous act and asserting her right to seek justice. As dawn turned to morning, the three women sat together in a tight circle of solidarity. Mariah's sobs had subsided, replaced by a steady determination. She placed a hand on the gentle curve of her stomach, feeling the life within her, and, with it, a fierce protectiveness she had never known before. This unborn child, born of violence, would be surrounded by love and truth. And as Sharon and Tessa vowed to shield her from further pain, Mariah felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a belief that, though the past could never be undone, a future built on courage, love, and justice awaited them all. In the days that followed, Mariah would find herself navigating medical appointments and legal consultations, each step a reminder of the battle ahead. But she would not face it alone. Surrounded by unwavering support, she would transform her trauma into strength, her shame into a platform for truth. And in doing so, she would ensure that Ian Ward would never again have the power to harm another innocent life. The road would be arduous, the nights long, and the memories painful. But Mariah, fortified by the love of Sharon and Tessa, would walk that path with her head held high, determined to turn her darkest hour into a beacon of hope for herself, her unborn child, and all who dared to stand by her side. ChatGPT DNOI, Mariah's descent began the moment she realized that the man who had violated her most intimately, the man who had drugged and assaulted her, was now the very father of the life growing inside her. Each heartbeat in her womb felt to her like a hammer striking her own sanity, and each breath tasted of bitter dread. The memory of that night played on an endless loop behind her eyes, the glass raised to her lips, the sudden darkness, the nameless horror when she woke alone in Ian Ward's apartment. That craven smile on his face as he whispered that no one would believe her. The betrayal, the physical pain, and now the proof that he had robbed her of her choice, her agency, her very body. The revelation that she was carrying his child shattered something deep within her, and Mariah found herself teetering on the brink of madness. Day and night, she fought the compulsion to erase the living reminder of her assault, to end the pregnancy before the world, and more terrifyingly, before herself, discovered the truth. I can't keep living with this, she sobbed into her pillow, her body racked with silent convulsions of fear. I can't look at him in my mind anymore. It was Sharon who discovered her first, standing in the dim bathroom light while Mariah knelt on the cold tile floor, body shaking as if made of glass. Mariah, Sharon whispered, kneeling beside her daughter, one hand on Mariah's clammy forehead. Tears spilled down Mariah's cheeks as she begged, "Mom, help me. Please, make it stop. I have to get rid of it before it's too late." Sharon's own heart cracked at the edge of her voice. She gently cradled Mariah's face, her calm strength a dam against Mariah's chaos. "You won't do anything you'll regret," Sharon said firmly. "You will not lose yourself or your future to the coward who hurt you. We refuse to let him take this from you." The urgency in Sharon's tone was ice and steel, and for a moment Mariah froze, doubt and desperation warring in her eyes. Tessa arrived soon after, summoned by Sharon's quiet plea for backup. But the sight of Mariah, huddled and hollow-eyed, tore at her heart. She knelt on the other side of her friend, slipping her arm around Mariah's shoulders. "I'm here," she murmured. Yet even as she spoke, guilt flickered across her own face. Daniel, Tessa's boyfriend, had been waiting for her at his apartment, and for the first time in weeks, Tessa had felt something like normalcy and hope. Now, torn between her loyalty to Mariah and her budding happiness with Daniel, Tessa's voice wavered. "Mariah, I want to help you," she said, "but I can't completely drop everything with Daniel. He loves me, and I I need him right now, too. Sharon's eyes narrowed, hurt flashing in her glance. You need him more than she needs you, she asked, voice low with disbelief. Mariah's at the breaking point. The room contracted with tension as Sharon and Tessa stood on opposing sides of their friend's crisis. Mariah, tears slipping in silent rivers down her cheeks, looked between them with a mixture of shame and fear. When Tessa rose to leave, her conflict between love and duty too thick upon her shoulders, Sharon's maternal protectiveness flared. You can't just walk away, Sharon snapped. Not when Mariah needs you most. Tessa's shoulders sagged, but she planted her hands on her hips in a fragile show of independence. I have my own life, Sharon, she retorted. Daniel is my anchor, and I need him to stay stable. That doesn't mean I don't care. Then care properly, Sharon shot back, voice trembling with anger and grief. You promised to be here for her, and now you're choosing your comfort over her survival. The harsh words struck Tessa like a blow. She opened her mouth, closed it again, guilt churning in her chest. Mariah's sobs, once frantic and raw, slowed into quiet gasps as she watched her two champions clash. In that pregnant pause, something shifted. Tessa's eyes softened, remembering the hours Mariah had spent consoling her after her own heartbreaks, the laughter they had shared, the trust they had built. Sharon's jaw unclenched as she glimpsed the battle in Tessa's heart between duty to love and duty to friend. Tessa stepped forward, enveloping Mariah in a protective embrace. Sharon sank to her knees as well, forming a triangle of solidarity around Mariah. The argument drained out of them, replaced by a fierce, unified purpose. We're a team, Sharon said gently, smoothing Mariah's hair. Mariah will not face this alone. Tessa nodded, tears shining in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered to Sharon, then to Mariah. I won't leave your side. Mariah's fingers dug into their arms, and for the first time since she learned the truth, she felt something like hope. In the days that followed, their alliance crystallized into action. Sharon arranged urgent counseling sessions for Mariah, refusing to let her daughter grapple with suicidal thoughts in private. Tessa coordinated with their mutual friends and family, care packages of comforting meals, discreet rides to appointments, messages of love and encouragement. They scouted every reputable clinic to ensure Mariah received the best prenatal care, despite her fears. When Mariah's nightmares returned, Sharon lay beside her through the dark hours, holding her until the tremors subsided. When panic rose in Mariah's chest in public spaces, Tessa's calm presence guided her breath back to steady ground. Together, they researched abortion laws and procedures, presenting Mariah with every piece of factual information, risks, timelines, support groups, so she could make an informed choice rather than an impulsive escape. At every step, they reminded her of her resilience, of the strength it took simply to survive what Ian Ward had done. Though Mariah still flinched at the mention of his name, she began to speak it aloud in therapy sessions, each utterance stripping away another layer of his power over her mind. Sharon and Tessa also turned their collective outrage into a legal strategy. Sharon's old colleague, a seasoned prosecutor with a reputation for pursuing sexual assault cases to the end, agreed to take Mariah's case pro bono. Tessa arranged private transportation and security for every court appearance, ensuring Mariah felt safe on the way to testify. With each deposition, with each piece of evidence, medical records, toxicology reports, Ian's own incriminating messages, Mariah felt her fear transform into fierce determination. Under the weight of her trauma, Mariah discovered wellsprings of strength she never knew she possessed. She kept a journal, turning her nightmares into prose, her terror into unequivocal statements of truth. On the day she finally stood before the grand mahogany courtroom doors, her hands no longer trembling but clenched into fists of resolve, Sharon and Tessa flanked her like guardians of her dignity. The moment Ian Ward took the stand, Mariah looked him in the eye and spoke clearly, refusing to cower. The verdict, when it came months later, was a testament not only to the power of justice but to the resilience of a woman who refused to let her worst nightmare define her forever. Ian Ward was found guilty on all counts, his reputation lay in ruin, and he faced years behind bars. But for Mariah, the true victory was in reclaiming her life, her body, and her mind. She emerged from the courthouse that spring afternoon with Sharon and Tessa by her side, the sunlight on her face warming her from within. As they walked through the city streets, Mariah paused to place a gentle hand on her belly. Inside her, the life she carried was no longer a symbol of violation but a promise of new beginnings, a testament to the love and solidarity that had carried her through the darkest days. Sharon slipped an arm around Mariah, Tessa held her other hand, and together they stepped forward, forging a future built not on shame or fear but on courage, compassion, and unbreakable bonds of sisterhood. Mariah had faced the abyss, and she had emerged, not unscarred, but unbroken. Daniel Spencer stood in the sparsely furnished living room of his loft, arms folded across his chest as he watched Phyllis Summers pace like a caged lioness. Her latest scheme? One that involved manipulating Dumas Holdings' financial disclosures to force Mariah's reluctant ally, Aristotle Dumas, into a corner, had been unveiled only hours before, and Daniel's face was a mask of disbelief and disapproval. "Phyllis, you can't be serious," he said at last, the frustration in his voice like a rising tide. "Blackmailing Dumas won't help Mariah. It'll only prove that we're willing to stoop just as low as Ian Ward did." Phyllis halted mid-stride, her expression flickering with wounded pride. She shook her head, smoothing the front of her impeccably tailored blouse. "Daniel, you don't understand. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. If I don't corner him, he'll slip through our fingers, and Mariah will never get the justice she deserves." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And this is better than going through the courts again? Because if it backfires, Mariah will lose any moral high ground she has left. She's trying to rebuild her life. Your gambit could topple everything she's worked for." Phyllis's lips thinned. She'd been burning with righteous anger since Mariah's assault by Ian Ward came to light, and Dumas, despite his philanthropic veneer, had recently reached out to Ian in a backroom deal that repulsed her sense of decency. But Daniel's warning struck home. She glanced away, uncertainty clouding her usual steely resolve. "There has to be another way," she admitted, voice quieter. Daniel nodded, relief mingling with lingering concern. They both knew that Dumas's machinations would not bend easily to threats, and their alliance, always uneasy, was fraying under the weight of desperation and moral compromise. Meanwhile, under the warm glow of table lamps in Sharon Newman's cozy living room, Nick Newman and Sharon sat across from each other, the air charged with unspoken questions. Nick, in a crisp button-down and jeans, tapped a slender finger against the tabletop. "Our trip to France is less than a week away," he began, trying to keep his tone light. "Have you finalized the itinerary? I'm looking forward to seeing the vineyards in Bordeaux, and maybe a detour to Marseille." Sharon forced a smile, but her eyes held shadows that even Nick's familiarity could not fully penetrate. She reached for her tea mug, her fingers curling around it as though drawing strength from its warmth. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, "that maybe I should sit this one out." Nick's brow furrowed. "Sit it out? But Sharon, we've been planning this escape for months. You need a break from all the chaos here." Sharon's gaze drifted toward the family photos lining the mantel, a snapshot of Mariah's graduation, a candid of their 3 daughters laughing in the garden, a black and white of her and Nick, newly engaged, arms entwined. Each image felt like a tether, reminding her of the daughter whose world was still unraveling. "It's not just the planning," Sharon replied, voice thick with emotion. "Mariah, she's drowning under her own trauma. Since she found out that Ian Ward, not just her rapist, but the father of her child, is pulling the strings in her mind, she's been haunted. And my secret," Sharon swallowed, "the thing she told me after her business trip, something more than a one-night stand happened out there. I can't leave her now, not when she needs me to stand between her and the brink." Nick's eyes softened, concern mingling with the sting of disappointment. "Is there more you're not telling me?" he asked gently. Mariah always says you're the one person she can confide in, that her secret is bigger than she ever imagined. If you're pulling out of this trip, I need to know why. Are you protecting her from something? Sharon's chest tightened. She had already hinted that the tragedy Mariah endured during that work trip was more catastrophic than a casual fling. But speaking the full truth felt like tearing open a wound too fresh to bear. She paused, weighing the gravity of her next words. Finally, she allowed herself a deep breath. Nick, please trust me. This is about something Mariah experienced overseas, something that could shatter her if she has to relive it without me by her side. I can't explain more right now. All I can say is she needs me. Nick nodded, though the disappointment in his heart was palpable. I understand, he said softly, though his eyes betrayed the hurt. But if you decide to come, know that I'll be waiting, and I won't judge you. I just want us to face things together. Sharon managed a grateful smile, tears flickering at the corners of her eyes. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Thank you, Nick. I promise, I'll decide soon. But please, don't take it personally if I stay. Nick leaned forward, brushing a kiss to her forehead. Whatever you choose, I love you, he whispered. Back at Mariah's apartment, late that evening, a single lamp cast long shadows across the room. Mariah sat on the edge of her sofa, knees drawn to her chest, rocking gently. Her mind raced with the relentless image of Ian Ward's calculating grin, the fear that she might someday see him walk free, the guilt that she could not protect her unborn child from his legacy. The impulse to end her pregnancy surged anew, but her mother's voice echoed in her memory.